Well, thank you very much for that very kind, exceedingly kind introduction. You might say that, well, since 8 years, things are continuously deteriorating, so you know who to blame. But I wanted to actually start by identifying the name, Alva Myrdal. Very important name, of course, in nuclear disarmament, but it's also very important for me. I have also a couple of different functions at the United Nations beyond my day job of disarmament, and one of that, I'm currently serving as the chair of the Board of Trustees of United Nations International School, which is a UN school, and Alva Myrdal was the first chair of the Board of Trustees of that. So I have a very special link with her. Of course, I've never met her, but she's a very important person for me. She cared about, of course, peace and disarmament, but also she was a very, very active supporter of international education. So I just wanted to recognize that very important part. Now, thank you for this opportunity. I think you will all agree with me that we are in a very, very, very difficult situation when it comes to peace and security and disarmament. Overnight, of course, there was that big news. So I have been very busy since early morning trying to get information, feeding that information to New York, to the Secretary General. I was just informed that the Security Council will have its emergency meeting this afternoon. My colleague will brief. And then Monday at 10 a.m., IAEA, a special session also taking place. So we are in a very difficult situation, I would say very fluid situation as well. In this, I have been asked to speak about pathways to nuclear disarmament. In other words, looking into the future. Looking to the future, of course, based on the current situations, but also identify how we might actually be able to get there to the nuclear disarmament and elimination of nuclear weapons. I obviously have to be very, very frank in the current situation. The situation now and the future, therefore, at the moment look very grim. And recent events, I don't even have to get into all that, but it really indicates that things will get probably worse before it gets better. But the reason why I'm here today is to really make sure that we all understand that lapse into cynicism and giving up is not the way to go. We really have to resist that tendency. And it's simply because future is not just a random coincidence, but it is something that we make. And that making of a better future has to start today. So it is in that spirit. It is not because I'm going to present some signposts, if you will, getting to the nuclear elimination, but it's not because I'm under any illusion about how bad things are. I'm fully aware of the difficulties of the road ahead, but we really have to strive to make progress. And because we really have to owe it to ourselves, and then we definitely owe it to the younger people, and then the future generations, of course. And such a better world really has to also include a world without nuclear weapons. Now, but let me just set the scene, start with the grim situations. We need to really accurately understand how bad things are. And then building on that, we have to articulate our strategy and pathways towards nuclear elimination. We are basically witnessing today challenges to the international order based on international law. Obviously, the vivid examples are, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also a continuing violation of international humanitarian law in Gaza. All these things are actually the real challenges to our order based on international law. We are also looking at erosion, if you will, of disarmament and non-proliferation architecture, more directly addressing today's subject. withdrawal of ratification of CTBT by the Russian Federation, qualitative and quantitative now nuclear arms racing. I was looking at the news summary this morning, which is compiled by our global communications department. I noticed the last item, the latest report released by, I think, ICANN, revealed that the amount of money that is now going into nuclear weapons for the first time exceeded $100 billion. And this is an increase from the previous year by $9 billion, just amount of money that we are putting into nuclear weapon systems. Of course, ongoing regional conflicts, not to even talk about a serious trends of escalation in the Middle East region. Of course, Iran nuclear weapons program issues has been already in the IAEA. We could, maybe if you have questions, we could have some exchanges on this, but that's at the moment the most concerning, the latest escalation pattern that we see in that region. And of course, against all this background, we also have increasingly sort of uncertain developments when it comes to new and emerging technologies. The advancement of technologies are so fast, outpacing the efforts on the international scene, multilateral efforts to build regulatory frameworks and governance. All these things are actually outpaced by the development of technologies. And I think all these issues are tackled in separate multilateral processes, but what are the conversions of those technologies with weapons of mass destruction, in particular with the nuclear weapons systems? Those are really difficult issues, and we need to actually tackle those issues really urgently. And otherwise, we will continue to see a further destabilization with an enormous amount of unpredictability. Unpredictability when it comes to international security is not a good thing. And that's one of the biggest sort of challenges that we have today. But let me just say a few words about the immediate next 12 months, immediate challenges. Because we have to actually start building our strategies for the pathways, starting with an acute list of challenges that we have in the next 12 months. So in the next 12 months, we have obviously multiple events on the horizon. And those events should actually serve to either reinvigorate what we have in terms of the regimes, or we could actually, and those events could bring to a complete standstill of our collective work when it comes to nuclear issues in particular. The first one, the immediate challenge, of course, is the Iran. As I said, there is a really dramatic developments overnight, and we were already looking at the possibilities of, IAEA's report, I think for the first time since 2005, said that Iran is not in compliance, and then so the IAEA Board of Governors were actually looking at those issues. How to refer to potentially Security Council, and there is also the horizon, the snapback possibilities, and then overnight dramatic possibilities. There were still possibilities of the bilateral negotiations between the United States and Iran. We don't know whether that will actually take place or not. It was planned to take place in Oman during the weekend. So really big and acute file, especially in the Middle East, taking place, and this is going to continue all the way until the NPT review conference next year, and then beyond probably. The second key event next year is, of course, the looming expiration of the New START Treaty. I don't want to get into all the details, but when it comes to nuclear weapons, so-called strategic nuclear weapons, it is not just a bilateral issue between the United States and the Russian Federation. When it comes to nuclear weapons issues, it is indeed a global issue. So we would like them to return to dialogue and negotiations if the timeline was too tight to actually negotiate and conclude a new successor treaty to New START. At a very minimum, I would very much like to encourage two states to keep the current cap under the New START treaty. That would mean quite a lot, I think, for the entire world. Now, these events, these developments will impact the third NPT review conference. The treaty is at, I would say, inflection point. It has been already having lots of stresses. The review conference will take place in April and May next year. And of course, there are people say that the treaty itself is more important. The review process is review process, but let's make sure that the treaty will remain. I would agree. While I will agree that a treaty like the NPT would not collapse overnight, I would definitely emphasize that there has been a continuing sort of erosion of credibility and the trust of this treaty regime. And if we allow this treaty mechanism to continue to erode and weaken, credibility to go down further, then there will be a serious risk of cynicism coming from especially non-nuclear weapon states from the global south. What's in it for us? Why should we be part of the NPT? And I think that would be really a serious challenge that we don't want to see next year. What are the exact challenges? The first one is, of course, the mistrust and tension, competition between and among nuclear weapon states. NPT was always a point of convergence amongst the 5 nuclear weapon states. They felt that this was indeed a very important security instrument for them as well. But this unity and the convergence agreements amongst nuclear weapon states, as we saw last time in the 10th review conference, is really not there. Each state are now investing heavily on nuclear weapons arsenals. And then I think as a result, this strategic competition is resulting in renewed, if you will, centrality of nuclear weapons in security doctrines. So that's first a really big reason why NPT is under such a strain. The second one is, of course, a long-standing mistrust between non-nuclear weapon states and nuclear weapon states. Non-nuclear weapon states, in particular from the global south, always felt, or increasingly felt, that actually there was no intention of ever living up to the obligations under Article 6 of pursuing nuclear disarmament, and those suspicion became so enormous. They wanted to add something as a momentum, and there was a TPNW treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. But there is also a new dynamics that has been inserted quite recently in the past year or two, which is divergence of view between non-nuclear weapon states, between those that are under the so-called extended deterrence or nuclear umbrella, or those who are actually in the arrangement of nuclear sharing. And those versus non-nuclear weapon states from non-aligned states in particular, they are a new source of tension and disagreements, and that is actually added to the mix of difficult multilateral diplomacy. So the result is that further divisions amongst non-nuclear weapon states, not just between nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states, so that the multilateral diplomacy is getting really complex and complicated. You can see that challenges are enormous, but that's not why I'm here. I wanted to actually put to you a suggested, if you will, 5 signposts in terms of a pathway to nuclear disarmament. The first signpost, obviously, is that we must reach along the road to disarmament by, first and foremost, really preventing a nuclear war. And for that, I think risk reduction is an immediate, natural step. Doctrinal measures such as no first use, I always emphasize credible no first use discussions is absolutely important. And that should be really coupled with discussions such as negative security assurance, transparency issues. All these things actually come together will amount to useful risk reduction measures in the current context. Of course, restraint in rhetoric is another key issue. Nuclear threat cannot be and should not be normalized. We should not get used to it. So we need to always really push back. We have to strengthen crisis communications, and here the link with the technology is really important. The new crisis communications and risk reduction measures have to be actually hardened against technological developments, because there are new vulnerabilities that are actually emerging with the advancement of technologies, and also the new domains such as outer space and cyberspace. Restraint in development and deployment of new weapon systems. They are now new, technically speaking, conventional weapon system, but with a strategic impact. So I think restraints in this kind of new weapon systems also will be really very, very important. So from these perspectives, I think, again, US, Russia coming together and then start actually looking at those challenges will be key. How China can be brought into those discussions will be another absolutely important key, especially when it comes to transparency and risk reduction and credible no first use policies as well. Second signpost I would suggest is, of course, a successful preservation of and support to strengthen the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. Now, I think everyone here will agree that so far it is a cornerstone of nuclear disarmament regime. I would even say that one of the pillars of international peace and security regime as such. And in spite of many challenges, they have been actually there, and many, I think all states have been acknowledging the importance of this disarmament regime. But again, first and foremost, all states, but especially nuclear weapon states, really have to reaffirm the commitments to the commitments that they have made, especially under the Article 6. And they should use the next year's review conference to, if you will, find mechanisms to improve the implementation and accountability for the implementation of these commitments that has been made. I think that will be one of the key achievements that we need to strive to make next year when it comes to NPT. Now, many will probably say, is it really possible to have a successful outcome? It, of course, depends on how to define a success. But I think still next year's review conference will be a key moment for the treaty and the regime as a whole. And the good news here is that there is no template or format agreed in terms of an outcome document. So if states parties can be innovative and creative in thinking through how they could actually package or how they could come up with a successful outcome, then I think they will be still entirely possible as well. You know, not just one sort of planned outcome, but also be flexible and agile. And states parties are really encouraged to also think about plans A, B, C, maybe D, and then through dynamic negotiations come to a successful outcome that could meet a consensus agreement. And I think that's, from my vantage point, looking at those issues and then talking to basically all states parties on these issues, I think it is still entirely possible. It's up to how you define and what kind of a creative outcome formula and the packaging the member states, the states parties could actually come up with. Let's make sure that this second signpost will be achievable, and then we are now working a very, very intensified manner with all states parties, and especially middle countries in the sense of those states, cross-regional. They are committed to nuclear disarmament, and then other pillars, of course, the non-proliferation and the peaceful uses. These are, of course, equally important. States across the region from different profiles working together to make sure how these packaging will be a possibility, will be diplomatic, multi-diplomacy standpoint. I think it will probably be one of the key elements. And from that point of view, the Stockholm Initiative is important. It is increasingly difficult, of course, to achieve unified positions across the region and across different profiles. But I think that kind of work, NAC is also another very important one. MBTI is a very important platform. So we count on those states to work with us to produce good results next year. The third signpost is what I have already mentioned, meaningful engagements by states regarding developments in new and emerging technologies in the context of nuclear weapons. So the conversions or the linkages between those are quite important. As I mentioned, different technology issues are already being tackled in different multilateral platforms, but there is really no overview. Even in the nuclear weapons area, many experts are now talking about it, but because of stresses under the NPT and the fact that the Conference on Disarmament is not really, they now have an agenda, and then they are discussing very intensively different agenda items, but the conversions issues, I think, will be very important. This I say not only from a negative point of view, but also there will be potentially important benefits of these technologies as well. In particular, of course, for example, AI can be utilized for nuclear disarmament verification issues more effectively. So there are many positives, and I think we need to discuss much more of how we might be able to take advantage of those new technologies, sensor equipment, etc. But of course, the negative potential risks we need to also tackle as well. AI applications in nuclear field could open new vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, in nuclear command control and communications. It will definitely compress decision-making time. So there is, compressed decision time frame. Human commanders might rely more and more on AI-enabled decision-making mechanisms. For me personally, it's a scary thought. And of course, it will raise the spectra, if you will, of misunderstanding and miscalculations and unintended escalations. And those are the kinds of things that we really need to tackle. And I would argue that we need to tackle very urgently. Of course, cyber and outer space is also another reason why we need to look at new dangerous vulnerabilities and tackle them. I think it's generally speaking beginning to be understood, but it is yet to be really migrated into a political and diplomatic discussions to look at the convergence issues. So the fourth signpost, if you will, and then this platform is very important for that, is the public engagement, advocacy, especially through and with younger generations. Here I just wanted to say a few things. I think it is hugely important that we equip younger people with expertise and knowledge, but also skill sets, and encourage them to be innovative and creative in their thinking. And obviously we need to empower them, they need to have space, they need to be at the table, they need to be influence the course of debate at important policy-making platforms. So we need to make sure that they actually enter into those policy space as well. And then with communications, I think disarmament experts somehow tend to have a really in silo using expertise, very difficult to understand terminologies. I think we need to also make sure that public and younger people will understand better what is at stake, so that they will also enter into this community. We are going to need new generation of people, experts, policymakers in this field, and the time is now really to focus on youth engagement and education efforts. So that's the fourth signpost. And then fifth and the final is, of course, to already look at and ensuring irreversibility in steps taken in pursuit of nuclear disarmament. It's already been recognized already in the 2000 review conference and then 2010. And they are actually already expert discussions on verification issues to ensure that it's not going to be reversible. But we could actually definitely intensify our technical work in that. And that will be, of course, the final stage of reaching the nuclear elimination. So let me conclude. I hope you believe me this way. There is clarity that the pathways actually exist, pathway to nuclear disarmament. I would argue that two things are key. Of course, one is something that you always hear, political will. If there is a political will, there is definitely a pathway that we can follow. In order to have that political will, what I really want to emphasize in my concluding part is that disarmament, non-proliferation, and arms control is not some sort of a utopian dream proposal. These are always security instruments. Actually, in 2018, Secretary General issued his agenda for disarmament. And in that agenda for disarmament, he defined the word disarmament and disarmament toolbox very widely to include measures like transparency, confidence building, arms control, etc. So we need to make sure that today's defense discourse and security discussions actually also look at those instruments that rely on various disarmament and arms control toolbox. It will be always a combination of adequate defense measures, military measures, but also, very importantly, diplomatic efforts using disarmament tools will be quite important. If you actually understand the utility of those instruments, then I think it is probably easier to mobilize the political will. And to get there, of course, as I mentioned, engage young people in the public and make sure that they understand what's at stake, etc., will also be very, very important. And it's simply, no matter how challenging it is, we must pursue it, because this is about existential threat. And for too long, we relied, for 80 years, actually, nearly 80 years, we relied on luck not to repeat Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the Secretary General, to quote him, he says that luck is not a strategy. We cannot continue to rely on the good luck that nuclear war has been avoided. So we have to actually reassemble, starting from reducing the risk all the way following the pathways signposts. And we must make sure that the world will be a safer and a more secure place. As I started out, the future is something that we shape, and then the shaping of the future starts today. It's not just a random coincidence, the future. So we have to actually redesign our approaches and then start making our future to be something that is a better one, more secure one, and safer one. So this is not just a call to action. There are many young people, but it is also an invitation for you to lead in this process. The United Nations these days we're going through a very difficult moment, but I always say that the United Nations is you. UN is something that you make us. So it is very much, it has to be a joint endeavor, a joint effort, and we are really counting on your support and creative ideas to reinvigorate and redesign the pathways through to the world without nuclear weapons. And I think it is entirely possible. I've been with the UN since 1989, and if I am a pessimist, I would not have survived. I am an optimist. I always find my source of energy through people like yourselves who wants to make a difference. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to some of these exchanges to follow. Thank you.